One of the main problems the Naruto community has had since I've been a part of it and even before that is the problem of the Databook's credibility, with some people believing statements are completely irrelevant to the topic of a versus battle and that only feats should be applied when scaling a character by themselves or in comparison to another person, and some people believing that the Databooks are the end-all be-all and the true way to power scale. Admittedly, these are both fairly extreme positions, and if I'm to pick one I lean towards, it's probably the latter. I think the data books, at least at the time they're released, are an accurate representation of what is meant in the manga, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit later. People tend to talk about the data books as if they're these mysterious books from the elder days that hold the secrets to the Naruto verse within them, when in reality they aren't really like that. They're just material written by Kishimoto and his staff with more information on the manga. I have to sympathize with those who don't think the data books are credible, because when you interpret some of the statements in the data books, especially with all the mistranslations, at face value, since they sometimes use weird language, you can draw pretty ridiculous conclusions, and I'll quickly provide an example. In the first fan book, it stated that Orochimaru is the most powerful and most evil of all village enemies. This should mean that Orochimaru is stronger than Kaguya, Madara, Ishiki, Momoshiki, so on and so forth, correct? Well, yes, if you completely ignore the context, that is. Fan book 1 came out in October 9th of 2002, meaning that any statement in the book is likely referring to things that happened prior to that time in which Orochimaru was the most powerful enemy. Madara had never been shown, hinted at, or even mentioned. Momoshiki wouldn't be released until over 13 years later. Kaguya hasn't been hinted at or mentioned, and same goes for Ishiki. So what should the conclusion be to draw from this statement? You'd simply say that at the time, Orochimaru was the most powerful enemy, and the statement becomes obsolete. We have other characters stated or shown to be stronger than Orochimaru that come after the statement. So while arguing that the way you interpret the manga, Kiba could actually whoop Orochimaru low difficulty at this point won't be a valid argument, showing why due to things post October 9th, 2002, Orochimaru isn't the most powerful enemy is valid. Anyway, I'm sure you can get the general theme of the video from the things I mentioned. I'm going to be going over the more controversial statements and explaining a better way to interpret them, or pointing out genuine mistakes that the data book makes. And there's a lot to go over since there are over 10 different data books, but I'm not going to go over every single one of them. I'm going to go over the problems with the first 4 since they are the ones you can most commonly rely on, written by Kishimoto, same as the original manga, and they're also the more relevant ones that everyone seems to have a different problem with. I'm going to start with the statements mentioned in Databook 4 since tons of people have problems with those, and then move to Databook 3 since it has the same issue. Obviously, I'm prone to making mistakes, so if I miss any statement, please comment it and I'll address it in the comments. And if enough people comment on different statements, I'll obviously do a follow-up video. I do discussion videos like this a lot, so if you enjoy them, be sure to leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. But on to the first statement people have an issue with. Like I said, I'm covering Databook 4 first, and let's be clear, Databook 4 tells you it covers up to chapter 691 of the original manga. If you don't know what that is, it's right before Sasuke turns evil and kidnaps all the Biju, but right after they beat Kaguya, so it doesn't cover Boruto, the last, or the final valley fight from the end of the manga. Has anyone ever told you that Tamari is universal? Your natural response was to point and laugh at them, but they were serious and they sent you a scan. You look at it and sure enough, the fierce tornado that blows the entire universe away. So that makes Tamari universal, right? Wrong. This is simple hyperbole. This is not, however, a mistranslation. This text reads the kanji bansho, which means all things or the whole of creation. An obvious contradiction to this would be Tamari being incapable of taking down the third Raikage, even with help from 2 other wind release ninja. Most would respond to this by saying it simply only applies to Tamari's AP or attack potency, but that doesn't make any sense in context with the statement at all. It claims Tamari to blow the entire universe away. That's a statement made about destructive area, not attack potency. On top of that, this is just a title card. The following text is filled with more contradictions. With her fan in hand, Tamari creates a sudden gust and from a distance eliminates any enemies that stand in her way. Again, this isn't a mistranslation, but simple hyperbole. That's once again contradicted by Tamari not being able to beat the third Raikage, even with help. If you watch the anime as well, this doesn't really affect Madara either, but that's the anime to be fair, and the Databook covers the manga. Aside from this, it's pretty easy to interpret the title statement as blowing away the universe in the sense of surprising everyone. Like, that performance blew me away. Not that she can actually send the universe flying with the swing of her fan. I don't want to spark a Lightspeed Naruto debate in the comments with this next one, so let me make it clear I am not saying this character is not Lightspeed. I am simply only commenting that this scan does not say they are Lightspeed. The Raikage's lariat is especially powerful, and the Databook's description of it makes it feel even more powerful. But what's most important here, at least in the eyes of the community, is that the Databook claims that with the lariat, the Raikage can move at light speed. I've had this translated again, and this is spoken as a simile, not as the Raikage being light speed, while a more accurate translation is saying charging forward with light-like speed, similar to when Amaterasu is called hot like the sun. Again, this is not to say the Raikage or anyone around his level is not light speed. If you have another way for the Raikage to be light speed, good for you. This specific scan, however, just does not say it. There aren't that many more translation errors in Databook 4, at least not popular ones. There are a few timeline issues with Databook 4, but honestly, those can be ignored and they aren't that serious anyway. Like, who really cares about how old Anko is and how important is that? Again, let me point out, Databook 4 is not officially translated. The only Databook that is officially translated is Databook 3, which we'll be going over next, and even that has its problems with translations. Databook 3 is home to a great deal of errors. To show you one that is blatant to anyone with two eyes, look at this picture that covers pain. Do you notice anything weird about it? Viz copy and pasted the same paragraph 2 times on this page. I honestly don't even know how an error like that made it into the actual release, but nevertheless, there it is. If you want to know what this paragraph actually says, using nothing new at all, but still completely different than what Viz says by copy and pasting the previous paragraph twice. Moving on, has anyone ever told you that Hebi Sasuke's power exceeds the entire Akatsuki, or that Kakashi is omnipotent? Both those statements are also from this data book, and they're both mistranslations, but funnily enough, the Sasuke one is a mistranslation from the official book that Viz got wrong and the fans got right, but the Kakashi scan is a translation that the fans got wrong but Viz got right in their official book. So let's start with the former. Fighting skills from devoted training. His power exceeds even that of the Akatsuki. Now, even ignoring the mistranslation, it's obvious what Viz was going for here was to say that Sasuke's power lets him fight and beat Akatsuki members, and not that he could solo the entire Akatsuki. That was a very disingenuous way of interpreting it from the very beginning. If Sasuke has power that lets him beat Akatsuki members, and honestly he could beat like half of them, maybe more, then he has power that exceeds the Akatsuki. But let's get into the mistranslation. A powerful fighting ability, the power to surpass even Akatsuki. This is a statement about Sasuke's potential, not about him exceeding the entire Akatsuki. Real quick in a simple clear up to a misconception like that. So let's move on to Kakashi, another pretty quick example. This is just straight up a random fan translation. The word omnipotent is not on this page, and honestly, I can't find a source for the translation anyway. Now, getting back on the topic of Lightspeed Naruto, Kirin is stated to be Lightspeed in this data book, which is another error on Viz's part. When it comes to this book specifically, their translation says, lightning takes the shape of the legendary beast Kirin and vanquishes the enemy in a flash. While it's supposed to say, destroys the enemy in a crash of thunder, lightning takes the shape of the legendary divine beast Kirin and charges at the target. A hit at the speed of light is inescapable, eradicates the enemy before you can blink. Now, Zetsu does say that Kirin strikes at 1/1000th of a second, so this has to be wrong, right? No. Zetsu, for one, has never seen Kirin before. He has no idea what Sasuke is about to do. He assumes Sasuke is merely going to guide lightning down onto Itachi, which he does do in a sense, but it's more complicated than that since, it turns into a dragon and normal lightning just doesn't do that. Other than that, this databook is fairly clean. There's some weird claims in it, such as Hashirama being described as peerless when fighting Madara, but then Databook 4 claiming the two of them are equal. It also weirdly says that no one alive can control the Nine Tails even though Obito is alive. And while it is true that Obito denied controlling the Nine Tails to Sasuke, Itachi does say that Obito, or Madara, is the one who did it. Speaking of Obito, however, this may just indicate that Obito simply lacks the power he did when he was 14, and I guess there isn't really a contradiction to that. Like I said, the claim is just weird, but it is worth noting Databook 3 only covers up to chapter 402, and Obito isn't shown controlling the Nine Tails on panel until chapter 501. So take it how you will. It's either Obito can no longer control the Nine Tails and he's gotten weaker over the years, or the databook is simply wrong here. To add on, that might not matter all too much, since regardless of Obito doing it on the day of the Nine Tails attack, he is still claiming to be Madara, who did famously control the Nine Tails in the fight against Hashirama. So the databook's claim might be solid still, but like I said, up to interpretation. Since Databook 2 is fairly clean and lacking in errors, I'm going to skip to the first databook here instead of covering Databook 2. This databook is home to a lot of the statements people bring up when discrediting the databooks, and it has never been officially translated by Viz Media, similar to Databook 4. Again, the only two Naruto guidebooks that have been officially translated are Databook 3 and Fanbook 1. The covers of them look like this. But like I mentioned a moment ago, this one houses a lot of the idiotic statements people like to use, so let's go over them. Kid Neji is faster than Hiruzen. This argument is a byproduct of a larger problem that the databooks present, that being the stat chart system that they rank each character by. You may have heard this before if you caught it on like an old stream or maybe an old video, but the stats being an individualistic value explains this problem away, basically saying that Neji is closer to his potential peak than Hiruzen is, which if you think about it isn't that far out, considering Neji is a young kid who's got room to grow and get stronger, and Hiruzen is an old man who has just been getting weaker because his body isn't what it used to be, to the point that even him making shadow clones is seen as a waste of chakra that would just shorten his lifespan. Because as we all know, Kid Neji is not faster than Hiruzen, and if that needs to be proven to you, it's easily doable. Hiruzen is just as fast as Orochimaru, who should be at the level of Kabuto and Kakashi speed blitzed Neji at the Chunin exams before he could kill Hinata. You could also question yourself if you're someone who does think that stats actually compare character to character, and ask why you think it is that that's the purpose of the charts. I guarantee no one could prove that, and you have extra support for it not being meant to compare them with the argument that Hiruzen could speed blitz Neji that I went over earlier. Regardless, this is a problem with the databooks because it isn't made clear what the stat charts are used for until all the way in Databook 3, which tells us that these are meant to show the shinobi's progress in certain areas across different databooks, not for them to be compared to one another. There is another statement in here that a lot of people have a problem with, that being Sasuke is stronger than 5th Gate Lee. I kind of go over this in my Chunin exams video I made a really long time ago, and it's a really annoying debate that sparks a ton of hate from Lee fans, which you can't put Lee up against anyone and say he lose because you get attacked for it, and I really don't feel like going through that in the comments of this video. So I'll leave the misguided Lee fans alone and move on to the next statement, that being Kakashi is Konoha's strongest ninja. There is no mistranslation with this statement. The statement is accurate. It's calling Kakashi the strongest ninja in Konoha. The main problem people have with this statement is it's referring to Hiruzen and Might Guy. There are two ways to sort of debunk this statement, and they're fairly simple. For one, the statement of Kakashi being the strongest ninja in Konoha is likely referring to what Konoha has to offer in terms of their workforce. Considering the following sentence is talking about how he made himself known in other nations, even though Hiruzen is technically a ninja of Konoha, he is the Hokage. He's not out there protecting the village and taking missions. If you need to hire someone for a mission from Konoha, Kakashi is the strongest ninja you can get a hold of, basically. Now, that isn't actually a debunk, it's more of an alternate interpretation of the statement, but it has the same function. You can even support the interpretation by saying Orochimaru literally fear hacks Kakashi to the point where if they fought, all Kakashi could imagine was his head getting cut off. And if someone wants to argue some weird aura thing about Orochimaru being scary, you can support it with Kakashi after Kabuto successfully evaded him, thinking that Orochimaru has people like that on his side. He needs to get stronger or he'll become obsolete. And then obviously Hiruzen is as strong as or stronger than Orochimaru is, so he should be stronger than Kakashi. When referring to Guy, I think it's fair to say Kakashi is stronger than Guy at this point, but for the future, meaning past chapter 119, which is all this data book covers, I don't think you can apply the statement, which you need to look at it like this. By chapter 119 in July 2002, what do you really have to say Guy is stronger than Kakashi? You really have nothing, and that's how this data book should be looked at. The crazy things Guy does didn't even exist at this point. He had never opened a single gate at this time, but moving on, since I've already spent tons of time on this data book, let's go over the last statement, that being Haku is light speed. This is simple, and I've gone over it before, but all it says is for Haku, it's possible for him to go light speed, not that all the time he is light speed. Haku literally introduces us to mental amps from protecting, so maybe if he needed to protect Zabuza or something, he could go light speed between mirrors and do it then. Doesn't make Kid Naruto, Sasuke, and basically the whole verse at that point light speed. Sasuke crafted a jutsu that goes light speed in Shippuden, that being Kirin, and claims it to be undodgeable and unblockable. So it makes no sense for him to think that if he had long surpassed the speed of light, it's just completely inconsistent. I would cover Databook 2, but Databook 2 is actually pretty clean as far as statements go, so there's no real need for it. But as I said in the intro, if there's a statement I missed or you personally want more clarification on, leave it in the comments and I'll try to respond to as many as possible. Obviously, if you like the video, leave a like on it and subscribe as well. But other than that, have a nice day.